Hey everybody, it's Dr. Weber, and today we're going to talk about mobility training, what it is, the benefits, and some demonstrations. So, mobility is a combination of flexibility and strength training. You're taking your joints or your muscles through their full range of motion, and we're either holding them in positions or we're moving in and out of positions. Basically like stretching, but adding some contractions and adding some dynamic movement pathways to support the architecture of the joint. So when we learn about mobility training, we're actually learning how to move each joint of the body. So we have 9 or 10 major joints: neck, spine, lower spine, so the 3 parts of the spine, the shoulders, the scapula, the elbows, wrists, knees, hips, ankles, and they all move different ways. So learning how to move the body in different ways and learning about each joint and its ranges of motion is basically another term for mobility training, because you're training yourself to understand how the body moves, and then eventually you won't need a mobility trainer. You'll be able to do this stuff on your own, and you'll be able to determine what you need to move and what you need to move more of. So mobility training in essence is stretching, kinetic stretching, dynamic stretching, all in one. You can call it dynamic stretching, you can even call it stretching, okay? But mobility practitioners are going to definitely understand how the body moves. So if they are a practitioner and you're learning from them, then try to understand how the body moves in space and then take what you can and implement it when you are strength training. So the reason why we mobility train is because we want better range of motion when we are strength training. If we already have great range of motion and we don't need mobility training, you don't have to do it. It's just recommended as something to do on off days from strength training, to just provide some muscle stimulation, to provide some movement of the joints, to loosen things up a little bit. Kind of like a yoga or Pilates class, mobility training is really designed to kind of keep you moving. So on your off days from working out, whether it's strength or cardiovascular training, on those off days, yes, walking is a great tool. Playing with your kids, doing things outside are great things. But if you have some time, it's raining out, and you want to do some stretching, it's good to know what to do and why you are doing it. So understanding how the body moves, each joint of the body, how to provoke tension in those tissues or the muscles, and then how to load those muscles, whether it's isometrically or whether that's adding in some dynamic blocks or movement pathways. So that's a little bit about mobility training. The benefits of mobility training are going to be similar to flexibility training. If you are consistent with mobility training, you will notice and feel a result just performing and practicing, just like you would if you were to go to a yoga class or Pilates class. Your body is going to adapt to the movements it's performing. So what mobility exercises should you be performing? Well, that just depends on your situation. If you have good mobility as it is, good flexibility as it is, you may neglect or not even perform flexibility or mobility training. Or if you just want to learn more about mobility or flexibility training, then you are at the right spot. So I do provide custom programming for people that let me know. I just started doing this, so if you're interested in custom mobility or strength programming, let me know. I will get back to you and set you up with some of my packages. I also do fitness consulting, nutrition counseling as well. I can talk you through macros, micronutrients, and calorie density, and how to basically measure your food if you were going to perform a self-analysis of your nutrition. So I can help in that domain as well. I mainly teach at the college level, so I am pretty busy with my schedule, and I'm only taking on serious clients outside of my college duties. So I'm interested to see how that will work out this year. I don't plan on overloading myself with training online, but I do want to reach out to the general public to see what interests there are in custom programming, consulting, and so forth. So let's get to mobility training. All right, so the first mobility exercises you're going to learn from a functional range conditioning specialist is the daily CARS routine. So the daily CARS routine is basically taking each joint through its full range of motion. That's what we talked about, how mobility takes your joints through their full range of motion. The first thing you should do, if you wake up in the morning or you've got nothing to do, is about a 3 to 5 minute mobility routine called CARS. So it's called CARS because it stands for Controlled Articular Rotations. So you're basically taking your joint through its full end range of motion in a full circle. So controlled articular rotation. So you're rotating the joint. So starting with the head and neck and then working our way down, we'll go through an example of each joint movement. So starting with the cervical spine or neck, you have C1 to C7, 7 vertebrae, and they're responsible for flexing, extending, laterally bending, and rotating the neck. The neck, thoracic spine, and lumbar spine they all have the same actions, but your neck has a lot of flexion and extension, a lot of rotation, a lot more rotation than the thoracic and lumbar has the least amount of rotation, but has a really good capacity for flexion and extension. The thoracic region is really the primary rotational aspect of the mid-spine comparatively to the low spine, and it also laterally bends the body as well. So we're going to go through each movement starting with the head and neck, C1 to C7. What they also perform in functional range conditioning, or what we do, is teach irradiation. So basically what that means is we tense our muscles, our core, like somebody's about to punch us. We stiffen our muscles, our forearms, our fists. We spread the floor apart, really ground ourselves with our toes. Squeeze into the ground, squeeze the quads, squeeze the glutes. And then from here, we're gonna just focus on moving just the neck. So we're gonna flex down with our neck, rotate, laterally bend, extend, rotate, look over the other shoulder, and then the chin's gonna drop down, and then you're gonna complete another rotation going the other way, and you're gonna do about 3 rotations for each joint. Or 3 rotations each side. So going left or clockwise 3 times and then counterclockwise 3 times. So that would be the head and neck. Then we have the thoracic spine. Give ourselves a hug. We can go wider legs here. Give us a little bit more stability. All we're gonna do is just flex the upper back down. This is the side view. This is just the upper back, so not the lower back. So we're not getting hips involved, so just the upper back will curl down. Then from here, we'll rotate, bend into the side, extend back, rotate, bend into the side, flex down. Rotate, bend, extend, rotate, bend, and flex down. So that would be the thoracic spine. So we have 7 in the cervical, and then we have 12 in the thoracic spine. So that was 12 of our thoracic spinal movements moving. We'll get to the lower back when we get to our hands and knees. Now we're going to get to the shoulders. So we're going to rotate the glenohumeral joint, or the ball and socket joint. We're going to reach across our chest, reach up overhead with our thumb back to start. Try to straighten the elbow, and try to have no movement in the spine or the neck. From here, we're going to rotate the palm facing out, reach as far back as possible, like you're reaching in the back seat of a car. Keep rotating so the back of the hand touches your thigh on the way down with your elbow straight. From here, you're going to reach all the way back as far as you can. Thumb will go up toward the sky as you rotate that shoulder up, around, across, and down. And then the same thing on the other side. So this would be a faster version. This would be the version you would probably want to do or start with first, nice and easy. And then you can make it harder by going slower and irradiating or squeezing throughout the body. The scapula come after that. So those are the shoulder blades. Those sit on the back of the upper back on both sides, kind of like the hips are on each side of the body. You have your scaps on both sides. They sit on top of the rib cage, and they help us bring our shoulders up, down, forward, and backward. But there's not a lot of movement here, okay? It's not like the shoulder where you see this big arm moving. It's just the scapular rotations here is what we would perform. Arms are straight, elbows next to the side like they're glued. You go up, back, down, around, and forward. So try to make a circle all the way around both ways, about 3 rotations each. So that would be the scapula. For the elbows are straight. You flex, palm face down, and then extend the elbow. Palm face up, bend, palm face down, extend. And then you reverse that order. And that's about 3 rotations each. Elbows, you might not really feel that much. Sometimes you can do them in different ways. Then we'll go to the hips. So the hips, you can do standing. I'll show you that one first. With your hand on the wall, flex your hip up with a 90 degree. Open the hip out, rotate, and reach back. And then knee touches the knee. Glute kicks back without using your lower back. Rotate around, flexion, and then down. So that would be hip car, hip controlled articular rotation. Remember, we call those cars. This is a hands and knees version. Okay, these would be 3 reps on each side. You can also do those side lying as well, just like that. Okay, so you're just taking the hip through its full range of motion. For knees, you can do seated like this, hands underneath the thigh, extend the knee, turn the foot in, and then flex, turn the foot out, extend, turn the foot in, bend, and then you reverse the order. So similar to the elbow, where you're supinating, pronating as you flex and bend. You can do that on your back as well, just like this. Bend, extend, bend, extend. And you can also perform ankle cars as well, circling the ankle. After that, we can perform our patellar cars or our kneecap, so you can move the patella in and around in a full range of motion circle. Nice and lightly, about 3 rotations each way. For the lower spine, you can do cat and camel, or segmentation of the spine, so getting the whole spine involved in flexion, and then untucking the hips, articulating the spine, and then extending the neck, and then flexing the neck. Upper back will go up as you curl the tailbone under. Okay, so getting the lower back involved, and you can also just do hip tilts, just like that, okay, to get the lower back involved. For the toes, we simply just, we try to bring all of our toes first off the ground. Then we try to bring all the toes down except the big toe and hold that for about 5 to 10 seconds. And then just the big toe down, small toes up for about 10 seconds. Then all toes up, and then you're gonna try to piano it from your pinky all the way down to your big toe. And you're trying for about 3 reps. Okay, you can challenge it by all toes up and then tapping just the big toe down. Okay, so that would be functional range conditioning mobility for the joints. So that would be called cars. And you can make those cars harder by adding weight, or you just use these cars as a way to either warm up the joint, or you just use it as a way to learn how to eventually stretch the joint. So we know that it can flex, so I can stretch the shoulder while it's in a flex position. We know it abducts, so I can stretch it in this position. I can stretch it in the extension position, and I can stretch it in rotational positions, okay? And when I stretch it in a rotational position, flexion, or horizontal position, I'm stretching specific tissues. So when I assess that circle, I'm really looking for any inefficiencies or issues or pain in the joint. And this is going to be a nice assessment before I work out, or just something to do while I am not doing anything. So your mobility or your carbs are things you can do while you're watching TV. You can be doing while you're sitting in a chair at a desk. These are all things. One thing I did miss was the wrist. So taking the wrists through their full range of motion. And that's just extending them, bringing them in all the way up and around, and then back the other way. Okay. I'm not a big fan of doing a lot of things you don't need. So if you're not getting anything out of these specific mobility drills, maybe you don't need them, or they're just not having any stimulation. So that's why the kinetic stretching, the dynamic movement pathways, dynamic stretching, and your typical body weight exercises are going to have more bang for your buck than mobility drills. Okay, so when we get into mobility-based positions and begin to perform PALs and rails, which is another level up from the cars, that's where you're going to learn about isometric loading and adding what we call PALs and rails, or progressive and regressive angular isometric loading. So we angle it in either a progressive state or a regressive state, and then we load it depending on what angle it's in, on percentages that we prescribe based on your ability level. So everyone's different, so you start at different levels, and so that would be kind of custom programming. But I do have a lot of examples of PALs and rails. If you look up Dr. Weber Fit PALs and rails, you'll see examples on that. That would be kind of the next stretch or next step when it comes to mobility training, and then you get into something like Kinstretch. So you can also look up Jordan Weber Kinstretch or Dr. Weber Fit Kinstretch, and that will show you some isometric movement pathways. These are the kind of the fancier things that people are more interested in. I call them dynamic movement pathways because I don't perform the strict isometric movement pathways that they prescribe, which are slower, more beneficial. I definitely agree with, but I think after that you want to kind of make it more dynamic. So it's more of a movement pathway for me than it is a sit still or slow movement that they call isometric movement pathway, which doesn't make sense if you are moving, right? So that's why I call it dynamic movement pathways. If you're interested in dynamic movement pathways, I have tons of those available on my YouTube and my new website. So if you are on Instagram, or go to my Instagram, check out my link in profile. That will link you up with my YouTube page and the videos I prescribe on my YouTube page, a little bit more organized on my website. I do allow for video subscribers to recommend playlists and videos. So if you have an interest in videos or playlists that you want me to put up on my website, I'll make that for you, because I probably have already created it, so I don't want to do anything I haven't done. But if you have recommendations on what I need to talk about next, whether that's dynamic movement pathway breakdown, PALs and rails, maybe it's strength training in general, or bodybuilding, nutrition, or anything fitness related. If you have questions, let me know. Reach out if you're interested, and we'll see y'all later.